When I first bought the GFX 50R, I promised myself that this'll be it. This'll be the thing that finally gets women to like me. And that I won't buy a bunch of heavy expensive lenses for it. Of course, you won't get far with a camera unless you use a lens or two. So I decided to run you all through my minimalist setup with the GFX 50R. Over the course of a couple of days, I took to the coastal streets of Compton and equipped the only native glass of the lineup, the GF 35-70 variable aperture. This is probably the most accessible lens on the system, and it just so happens to be the lightest zoom as well. So it kills two birds with one stone, the criteria being don't spend the earth and don't get too weighed down, both with life's baggage and with heavy lenses. I'm using the Portra 400 film simulation from Fuji X Weekly here, and it is worth noting that it's a profile meant for X-trans sensors like the ones used in the XT series. I think it works well on the GFR's medium format CMOS sensor here though. I liked the idea of showing this mess of uprights underneath the pier, and noticed how the effect is doubled in the reflections of the water. Directly underneath the pier, 70mm from the GF lens wasn't getting me close enough, so it's time to throw on the next lens of the kit, the Tokina 70-210 vintage lens. And I bet some of you are thinking, how could you use an old lens on a 50R, especially a vintage zoom? Well haters, I defy you to tell me which photos are from which lenses. My Tokina lens has the Minolta mount because I've also got some really cheap and inexpensive fast prime lenses for that system as well. I concentrated on the cross frames here because I thought the symmetry would look cool. It didn't. But maybe it's because of that dangling seaweed distracting from the symmetrical style of the image. Slightly better, but no. The light on the horizon wasn't looking too impressive yet, because sometimes it takes more than the entire solar system swirling through the endless void of space to impress me. So I headed into town and try and take advantage of golden hour there. I'll typically have the 35-70 on by default with this camera, and just put the telephoto and prime on for specialist stuff. We're starting to see some really nice pinks and blues in the sky as the sun sets here. Heading away from the coast and further into town panned out nicely, yielding some really beautiful light and long shadows. As well as a seagull, sitting on top of another seagull, which I think we can all agree is comedy gold. It's no wonder all 50 of you keep returning to this channel. As drawn to this bin as I was for sustenance, I got distracted by the awesome shot of the sunset Ferris wheel in the distance. When Helen saw this photo, she deemed it wise to offer her opinion, saying it reminds her of the classic film The Lost Boys. After screaming at her to go marry them if she loves them so much, I took my beating and carried on. Our seagull friend was still committing mass hilarity over there, so I aimed to get a different angle, only again to get distracted. This time by a couple of voyeuristic pigeons that, quite frankly, needed to get a room. You might notice that I stupidly focused on the shadow here instead of the padlock, so ultimately I missed focus. I put that down to being so hot under the collar from all the flirting that was going on right in front of me. Anyway, still using the Tokina after the Ferris wheel shot, I got after the seagull on a seagull shot from a different angle. Ultimately, this perspective is better, but I wish I'd realised that I didn't put any separation between the birds and the light on the building. Had I have done that, I think we can all agree that this would have been an award-winning photograph. This building would be cool to come back to in the depths of winter when it goes dark before 4 PM and all the lights come on and illuminate it. For now we'll have to make do with these shots. A quick peek round the corner reveals that the sun is getting lower in the sky now, as it tends to. So it's time to head back across the bridge and see how the beach is looking. I did consider maybe going all Tony Hawk on this section of town, but I can't skate, so that killed that idea. These telephoto images were too bad even for me to try and pass off as good. Have this one instead. Going across the bridge, the light was too good to resist, and so was the X-Pan aspect ratio. I gave in to both like the addict I am. Thought I'd head up to the pier now because that'll give us a really nice vantage point over the beach. Or not, because I soon come to realise that the pier is closed for repair, and judging by the length of it, it's going to take literally years to make it safe enough to not fall down and kill people. Although that would be a small price to pay for me to get the shots I want. So this is about as high as we can get, without drugs. But it did at least reveal how we can now see the sun and those classic orange and teal colours. The only thing for it now is to get back to the sand and make the most of this incredible light. Still haven't needed to break out the fast prime yet because I'm using both lenses to shoot directly into the sun and setting the aperture at around the f11 mark. Being sure to set the shutter to twice the focal length to keep the images sharp, something that you have to keep in mind because there's no IBIS on the GFX 50R. The Portra 400 film sim did something really cool here with the way it rendered these colours. The shots look like something from Terminator 2. I was half expecting Linda Hamilton to shimmy up one of these lampposts and start doing pull-ups. Not sure what caused this, but I guess it's the angle of the sun across the front lens element causing some kind of glare without flaring, making the colours look more desaturated. It looks awesome either way, and it's good to know that it had nothing to do with any skills from me whatsoever. Something that I can take credit for is working out how to get the reflection of this building on the pier to show up fully in the water. I took a few shots and worked out how high I need to stand on the slope down to the sand in order to get the full reflection I'm after. I had an eye for the reflections at that point as we crept closer into blue hour, and love the way that both the sky and the water are full of pastel pinks and blues here. Bear in mind there's zero post-processing in these photos. I like to get my images right in camera, and the Portra sim worked out incredibly here. Started heading back towards where we started now because, as the sun goes down, it's just a matter of time before I get mugged. Still not struggling with the kit lens in this low light even though it's pretty slow. It's set to 125ths of a second, the aperture's 5.6 and the ISO only at 3200. The medium format sensor is making a difference here and I felt no need for the tripod at all, which is just as well because I hate those things. The GoPro starts to struggle in low light here and the footage of that thing doesn't look great even in full daylight. So I didn't bother capturing too much blue hour footage, but here's some images of it. The sun's about to set and it's too dark for anything other than the Minolta 50mm 1.4. It's worth showing you all here because whilst the light it gathers does make a massive difference, it's a 35mm lens that vignettes heavily while it's wide open in this low amount of light. It's a shame because I was hoping to use this exclusively for low light, but you can pull even a hard vignette back a little bit in post. Pair that with a crop and the images can be quite usable. You just have to account for the crop that you're going to add in post during composition, which I didn't here. So maybe I'll have to go against my word and suss out a fast medium format prime to use in low light. I do love these Minolta primes though because they're so well built, they're small and they're fast, as well as inexpensive. But that hard vignette is far too much in low light. Probably usable in some low light settings with medium format, but it's still not 1.4. Recommend me some stuff in the comments and I'll try my best not to sink even further into debt.